I want to welcome everybody to another episode of the Brand Herald podcast. I'm Landon Wade, the owner of Goodson Clothing and Supply in Louisville, Kentucky, and I'm excited to have Jared Doerfler with Hanna Golf with me today. Jared, hey, thanks for being here from Iowa.
What's up, Landon? Happy to chat.
Today, everyone, we're going to be talking about Jared's story with Hanna Golf. He's the founder of the company. They make handcrafted putters right in the heart of the USA, man, right in Iowa. And he walked away from a corporate career to do this, and we're going to get into that story. A reminder, everybody, the Brand Herald is a podcast where we dig into what a brand really is and is not, the art and science of building one, and how branded clothing and promotional items play a role in that journey. I did tell Jared I'm going to be deviating from that plan a little bit today because it's not super relevant. What my company does day in and day out is not necessarily relevant to our conversation today. But it's a great story, and what really caught my attention was, and we just kind of touched on this, Jared, mentioned that he loves just real authentic conversations, and so do I. And I felt like just the story that you were telling on LinkedIn, the authenticity of just kind of, hey, it was like you weren't trying to sell an image. It was just sharing the real ups and downs of starting Hanna Golf. And on top of that, I just loved the clean and simple design of the putters and the branding, which you've done yourself. So, and also the fact that you've taught yourself how to do CNC machining through YouTube. So I guess you really can learn anything online these days. So, but with that said, Jared, can we just start? I want everybody just to kind of get to know you, the person. Tell us a little bit about where you're from, family, school, whatever will help people get to know you.
Yeah, I'm from North Iowa, so you wanted authentic conversations, and we just got that to start off the top there. My UPS guy, absolute legend, always tries to come in and chat about putters, and I had my door locked, and I heard him knock, and then he went through the garage door, and then he, comes out the front door there. So,
I love it.
Yeah, man, when you're a one-man shop, you do it all. So, yeah, from North Iowa, born in Kansas, but grew up in North Iowa. Played honestly, Landon, my dream since I can remember, probably like 10, 12 years old, was to play Division I golf. And, honestly wasn't talented enough. Really being in rural Iowa is tough to, get those resources. And also, my family didn't have a ton of money to go travel on some of these AJGA events. And quite frankly, I wasn't good enough to play in those anyway. So I ended up at a small school in Davenport, Iowa called St. Ambrose University. And actually just had a ton of luck there. Like everything was luck. Really for me. And I took that luck though and really snowballed that. And so I played well the fall of my freshman year and ended up transferring to Northern Iowa Division I school and had a preferred walk-on spot and ended up playing. The one thing I'm really proud about that is I walked on, but I also played. I think I played in almost every event except for 3 in my career at Northern Iowa. Now we weren't world beaters by any means, but we were a very average Division I team. But being a part of a college team really changed my life in a lot of different ways. So after college, I was kind of burnt out, got disqualified actually in my very last tournament of college and signed the wrong scorecard. Long story, but kind of just put a bad taste in my mouth for a little bit, and didn't play for a number of years. Wife and I lived in Kansas City.
So you literally put them down, huh? You just let it go for a little while.
Yeah, I only played for like bachelor parties. So you go through like a phase of your life.
Yeah.
At least for us and my friend group, most of us getting married between 25 and 30, so we're going through that phase of our life. And bachelor parties like seemingly like every month here in the summer. So that's the only time I played golf. My wife at one point, kicked me out of the house and told me to go play golf because I was probably too grumpy. I joined this little course in Kansas City. I ended up playing there like 3 times. And yeah, I just wasn't into it. And moved back to North Iowa. My dad had some health issues, and my wife and I dated in high school. So we wanted to raise a family, start a family, raise a family in North Iowa where we're from. And I had a good buddy of mine that I hadn't seen in a while. He played college baseball, and he's telling me he's shooting like even par and stuff. And I'm like, there's just no chance. Like there's no way than me. So he's like, hey, come out and play. So I started playing again and got the golf bug. And yeah, that was when I was probably about 30, I guess. I'm 35 now. So I've been back for 5 years. And my dad always told me, he goes, you'll get back. You'll get back. You'll start enjoying the game again. It's just going to be different for you. And it is different for me. And I do certainly enjoy the game.
Yeah, I love it. So talk to me about, one thing I wanted to say is, I knew some guys, because I'm from Ohio, and I knew some guys that played college golf. And I don't know, you probably agree with this. You watch the PGA now, man. It's like, I remember a guy I knew, he was like, he played on the Hooters tour, and he told me, he's like, Landon, he goes, And I was a pretty good player in Ohio. And he's like, and I thought, yeah, I'm really good. I can go play on tour, And he's like, he gets up and he was like, I hit my driver okay, hit my irons pretty good. I could putt it a little bit. And he goes, you get up to that level and everybody hits the driver a long way. Everybody hits their irons great. And at the end of the day, you get there and it's like, it's all short game. So it's just like, he just realized once he got to that level, he's like, it's just a whole different ball game, man.
Yeah. We spent a lot of time at the wedges. We had a wedge range in college, and yeah, I mean, it's different. I told my wife this, I don't know when it was, maybe last weekend or last week, whatever. I was like, and there's no data to back this up. It's just what I feel and kind of what I see. But I think like, so I graduated from UNI in 2011, which is what, 13, 14 years ago. Not that long ago, but it feels like those college golfers, like I'm probably 2 to 3 strokes better. I mean, there's no data to back that up whatsoever, but I just feel like when I look at scores and when I see a lot of these guys playing in tour events and making cuts and playing well, the level of talent in college golf is I think really special, and it's great for the game, for the pro game, as those guys will cycle through. But I mean, yeah, everyone hits it straight for the most part. Short game really is a big key, but more than anything in college, you have to have a grinder mentality to walk 36 holes,
Yeah.
walk 18 the next day. And it's really, it's obviously cliche, but it's so true. It's a mental battle.
I tell my daughter who plays club volleyball all the time, and, we were kind of chatting about it, and, they play like 9 months a year. And she's like, we were kind of talking about college. And I said, I know you're not going to play in college. And she's like, well, why would you say that? And I was like, because you never do anything outside of practice and games. I'm like, people don't understand the level of dedication you have to a sport. And it's beyond a love. It's borderline obsession. I mean, when you play college sport, you're just basically eating, sleeping, going to school, and doing that. All right. Tell me, so you said you graduated UNI 2011. What'd you get a degree in? Was it just business or?
Yeah, a standard business degree. Nothing
And
special.
yeah, and then you moved the family back and you were working, you'd gotten a job in manufacturing, right?
Yeah. Yep. So believe it or not, so I was in medical sales for, I don't know, 7 years or whatever. And I was kind of wanted to be done with that side, that time of my life from a career standpoint. So 2 of my teammates actually work for a company in North Iowa called Metalcraft, and one is now the CEO of it. And they're like, hey, look, there's this opening, from a sales standpoint. Why don't you come interview? And so, yeah, we interviewed, and we got that job. So my wife and I moved back, and we've been here since. I think it's been 8 years now, which it's far too long to be in this town for 8 years.
So one of the things that I feel like I picked up on the interview, I mentioned to you that I'd listened to a couple of other interviews to just prepare. And, I think you had said there was some health issues with your dad that kind of, and I don't want to tell the story for you, but kind of made you think a little bit about just the limited time that we've got in this thing. So, kind of talking about the spark, which actually goes back to you and I, because I know you talked about your coach and the putter and things like that, kind of the spark for Hana.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been the spark for Hanna Golf, and it's been the spark for, a lot of things in life and kind of how we want to live our life. But, time is a finite thing, and you can really there's whole podcasts and books on time. And the crazy thing about time is we never know when our time is done. Not only that is when we're going to face major adversity in our life. And my dad was diagnosed with MS in 2012. He actually helped me move out of my house down to Kansas City, and he was, he looked all right, but, he was wobbling around, and he did pretty well with the disease for about 4 or 5 years. He actually rode Ragbri, which is a bike ride across Iowa, like 2014. I skied with him in 2015 in Park City. I wish I would knew that had been the last time I skied with him. We would have definitely lapped some more runs, although I feel like we did push the pedal down a little bit. But, 2017, 18, he started progressively get worse. And, life is short. We were only seeing my parents about, I don't know, 3-4 times a year. It's just not really a way to live your life. I think, my wife's family is obviously, it was in town. They have since moved, but so it made a lot of sense for us to come back. But, the spark on it is my dad really worked his ass off, I think a lot of things in terms of like how grateful I am for my grandfather and my dad. My dad really worked his tail off. I mean, probably too hard when you sit back and look at it, right? But he didn't know any different at the time. That was his mission.
What'd your dad do for a living?
My dad my dad was a sales guy for a long time and then worked his way up to be a CEO of a company and part owner. He bought into this company in 2000 or early 90s and ended up buying, a good chunk of it in 2006. And, it's funny. I always sit down and chat about him like war stories. Like he got the worst deal in the world of buying that company. He didn't make any money for like 4 years after he bought it. I didn't realize like that my parents were basically like maxing out credit cards and stuff like that. The typical entrepreneurial dream, right? But anyway, so he worked really hard to make that successful and, at the latter stages. But, my dad's is like a big outdoors guy, right? Like cycle, he likes to ski. Anyway, he's retired now. So he retired 2 years ago and I'm thinking to myself, like that was fast. And now he has worked so hard to put himself in a spot to retire. And now he can't do the things that really he enjoys.
Physically. Yeah.
And I mean, MS is a terrible disease. There's worse diseases, but it affects everyone differently. Like my dad, for example, he can't sleep. And so if you can't sleep, like your body's not going to, it's not going to recover. Yeah. And so anyway, it's a real battle for him. Luckily mentally he's still good, but physically he's not in a great spot. And, I just thought to myself, like, dude, like life is so short. I can walk out of, I've said this a million times and I could walk out of my shop today and get hit by a bus, go and eat the mill. And, I don't know. So the whole genesis is like, look, we're not getting any younger. If we want to do something, let's at least give it a shot and give it our full attention and full effort. Doesn't work out great, not great, but we can always pivot and find something different, man.
Well, I think to me, what I hear you saying, and I think this is true, is like the fear that we all have for the downside is is not nearly as bad as we make it out to be in our head. It's like, and you rarely talk to anybody who's later in life, whether, in whatever situation, that goes, man, I wish I would have worked more, or there are always things like, I wish I would have spent more time with my family. I wish I would have taken more risk. It usually falls in those kind of, buckets. So I know that the genesis, kind of the story about your coach had kind of, you got into UNI, you were looking at the putter with him, he pulled out a putter, and then that's kind of how Hana really got started, or at least planted the seed for you making a putter, right?
Yeah. So I get to UNI and here's quick context on it. And another thing that I'm kind of like hanging my hat on a little bit, my wife now, who was my girlfriend back when I was in college, her dad is the cousin of as the coach at UNI, and they're pretty close. And, I was telling him before I was going, I'm like, I don't think he's going to give me a roster spot. He's asking me like, what am I doing? I'm not sure I'm going to get a roster spot, but he's going to give me a chance to practice. He goes, do you want me to make a phone call? I said, no, I do not want you to make a phone call. Like, I don't want, that's just how I am. I'm not a big favorite.
No special treatment, right? I want to earn it.
So I have to return that at some point in my life. And I just don't like, having that like internal debt, from that standpoint. Coach Bermel, he was true to his word. He said, hey, look, I'll let you practice with the team. You're not going to be on the roster. You're not going to get any gear, whatever. And I went out and I played well. I mean, I played, pretty damn good. It's probably the best run of golf I've ever had in my life for about 4 months. Played well enough to make the top 5. And once you're in the top 5, it's kind of hard to fall out of it. If you fall out and you do have 3 for 2 or whatever, you're going to probably get back in. So anyway, I'm there like the second day of practice, whatever. And we have this, I don't know what it was called, but it's similar to probably like, not like a putt view, but it's similar like a putt view like today.
Yeah.
Had all your data, as you're putting. And I had this blade putter, Tiger made the blade so popular and, especially for people my age. And, they're like, this is a terrible putter for you. Like
and they were saying that because of the data that they were getting off of you using it, right? Yeah.
They did. And that doesn't mean it's terrible for everyone else. Just, I don't want to make clear. It's terrible putter for you for 2 reasons. One, you should not be using a blade putter. They're like, we do want some toe hang on a putter, but we also want a mallet and a fat grip. And so he, by luck, went into his office and found like a mallet that had a fat grip on it. It was an original Super Stroke. And if you remember those original Super Strokes, they were like molded plastic. Like they were super hard.
Yep.
I putted with that thing and I putted so good for 3 years with that. That was great. Anyway, I gave it back to him when I graduated. And so, when I would toil around, every now and then, once a year, once every 2 years, I'd get on eBay and try to find that putter. It was a prototype. My coach Bermel played in a handful of PGA championships. And so he got off the tour truck at a PGA championship. I think it was in Tulsa. at Southern Hills. And so I gave it back to him. And so I've been looking for that thing and I can never find it. So, 10 years later or whatever, I'm like, I'm going to draw this from memory. And I think I got it wrong. I think I got it wrong significantly, but I drew it from memory, sent it to my brother-in-law who knows CAD, and he drew it up for me in CAD. And I got a hold of a buddy in Texas that has a machine shop, and he's like, he made it for me. So like, this is it right here.
The one that you had made. Okay. Yeah.
This is the one. And it's so bad. I actually gamed it. I gamed it. I was so proud of it. Like it was a design. It was something that I assembled it. I went on Reddit and posted a bunch of photos. Like I was proud of the fact that I did this. I thought it was a lot of fun and I really enjoyed that process. So yeah, when the time came, putters was in the list of things to do from a company standpoint.
So one thing that I think I told you when we kind of debriefed that I had just signed up, which is I'm embarrassed to admit I had just signed up for your newsletter. Mm-hmm. It's called, tell me what it's called again.
Perfect Putt.
Perfect Putt. You've been doing that for 3 or 4 years, right?
3.5 years. So that was kind of the genesis of me getting into golf, I guess, again, is, I was finishing an MBA program, had this awesome instructor, Entrepreneurship and Innovation. He's like, you guys should all be writing a blog online. And I'm like, I think about my writing skills and I go back to like college and like my writing classes and English classes, and I'm just not good. Like something I don't like to do is write, but I
hate writing.
Yeah. I took him up on it, and it was more from a research side. Like I'm a curious person. So I'm like, all right, let's start a newsletter. I love golf and I love business. I just love chatting about business. Yeah. And so I'm like, all right, like, let's just start.
That's why I do this podcast. I'm the same way.
Yeah. So I started this newsletter, and, I didn't have any followers online or anything. It took me 3 months to get 100 subscribers on this newsletter. And I think what its proof is that if you work at something, you can build a small audience, and you can build a big audience too. I don't have a big audience, but, I have a small audience, and, the newsletter now has almost 11,000 subscribers to it. And, I think it's opened up a lot of doors for me in the golf space.
You know what, one of the things that I was just thinking about as I was like, I've been listening to you there, but also through the other ones that I listened to, like what I appreciate, I listened to another podcast called Founders. Have you ever heard of the Founders podcast?
Who is it?
It's David Senra.
I listened to a couple. Yeah.
I love it. I mean, because like you just said, I'm kind of a business nerd. I eat it like candy, anything business. And the fact that he reads these biographies and, and kind of summarizes them. But, this idea that like, I feel like what I love about you is like, when I'm looking at like the Perfect Putt, I'm looking at Hana and all of it, I just think that you don't overthink it. Like, and I think we're so prone to overthink it. You're just like, hey, I love golf and I love business. So what can I do? If the guy challenges me and says, write a blog, it's like, what am I going to do that on? It's, well, I love these two things. So let's put them together, and then you act. And I think that's the biggest thing is just like, I was listening to one of his podcasts. It was the book that Nolan Bushnell, who founded Atari and Chuck E. Cheese, which is another interesting story, but was talking about finding the next Steve Jobs. And he was talking about that Steve Jobs, just like the one thing about him was he just acted. It was just like he had one speed and it was go, and he was going to do something. And I'm sure that you've, even in the people you've worked with in the past and whatever, it can be difficult sometimes to find people who do things. So I just love the simplicity of like, hey, I'm going to act. And so, from there, I know, you had this bug from this putter that you made. And then the next thing you know, you're like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and buy a mill. And we're going to, like you said, I'm emptying the bank accounts. We're going all in. And I'm going to make some putters, right?
Yeah, I think being naive is a great superpower in certain instances. Let's just put it like that. It's not always net positive, but naive with the riding, naive with making putters. There's no question about it. Yeah, I mean, so it kind of coincided with each other. Like my dad, told me he's retiring, and that was like that was just a very, I won't say an emotional moment, but like a big like wake up call for me, because I'm sitting here, I was a VP at a company, and good company by all means. And I'm like, what am I going to continue to do here? Like, what's the end game? And, Mike, I think the time is right. And I, chatted with my wife about it for probably 6 months, maybe longer. Like, I really want to do something, Landon. I had like 2 major requirements if I wanted to start a company. One, it had to be in the golf space just because of the small audience that I had built there. And quite frankly, the golf industry, the people that I have chatted with have been awesome. Like, it's a great space. And second, I had to make it. Like, I didn't want to go like on Alibaba and, and find a supplier for like apparel, or no knock on those people that do it, because they do a great job. But I just, I've got to make it. I've got to touch it. I've got to have that relationship with the customer, and and so it's like, what can you make in the golf space, Landon? Like, not a lot, like leather goods. You can do leather goods. You can do head covers. You can do putters. You can kind of do wedges, quasi wedges. You get the blanks from Japan and shape them. And I'm like, let's just go big, man. Let's just try putters. And so did some research on it. Probably not enough. It was even enough to think that I could teach myself. And it's been the hardest thing I've ever done.
The one thing that resonated with me about what you said, I mean, there's a lot of things that I really resonate with, but the big thing is about I had to make it. And I think about the business that I'm in, and, and again, it's like I mentioned to you, a big part of the reason that I do this podcast is because I love business, but also because it becomes a way for me to learn a lot and get better as a business person for my business and for my customers. But, we don't make anything that we sell. We decorate some things, we embroider items, but we don't make any of the clothing. We don't make any of the items. And I heard you say that, and I've seen, and I think we talked about this, it's never been easier really in the history of humanity to start an online business if you have a product. I mean, even if you're not making it, than it is today with platforms like Shopify and shipping platforms and warehouse management platforms and so on. But that idea of having to make something, because I think the interesting opportunities that it provides to make something to really then build a brand. But one question I did have was going back to your job before Hana. Did that background help you? Because you were working for a metals company. So was there anything that you gleaned from there, or is that just a coincidence, not actually providing any help?
Not really. So yes and no. Like I feel like I've got a good understanding of business. I feel like I have a good understanding of like strategy, distribution, and sales. Other than that, like my manufacturing skills aren't great. I work for a manufacturing company. It's kind of in my blood. And so like I have a passion for making stuff. And I guess it's one of those things where you just figure out. No,
but it wasn't like your previous job, like obviously, because you said you had to learn CNC. It wasn't like you learned anything about manufacturing or even materials. Like the thing about the fact that the putters are made out of the 303 stainless, like that, there was no crossover there. Like how did you arrive at, hey, I'm going to make it out of these 303 stainless billets?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. There's a lot of different ways you can make putters, right? You can do like carbon, 1018 carbon. You can do 303 stainless. You can do 304 stainless. You can even do titanium if you want. It really comes down to like machinability and also cost. So 303 stainless is a really machinable metal. I mean, it's hard to metal. I mean, it wears on your tools, but it machines really nice. Like it comes out really well. And then obviously, there's properties in that 303 stainless that are conducive to playing golf. For example, they're not really going to rust. You can see stainless rust in the middle of the ocean, but generally you're not going to see stainless rust. Whereas carbon steel, you'll see it rust. 304 stainless is going to be a little more difficult to cut. So, 303 really makes a lot of sense.
So it's just part of your research. You had come down to know that was yeah.
I didn't know anything about that before.
So, go back to the data. I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but I'm just curious. So then, you arrive right now. Everybody can go to hannagolf.com, Hanna Golf, HANNAGOLF.com. And you've got 3 models, the El Reno, the Amarillo, and the Denver. Talk to me about how you named them, how you arrived at those models. Yeah, talk about that.
Yeah, I don't want to get on. I could talk about this for like 15 minutes. So I don't want to go on for too long because I don't want to bore people. But, I owe a lot to my grandfather for a lot of different reasons. My grandfather, born in 1926 in El Reno, Oklahoma, grew up extremely poor, 9 siblings, 3-bedroom house. And I look at my grandfather and I'm like, I got to name, the putters after him. He was influential for really me playing golf. He was a huge supporter of me playing golf. And I look at my grandfather and like, he really kind of turned our family tree around. Not wealthy, but the ability to, reach, chase our dreams, if you will. And so without him, Hana Golf really probably doesn't exist. And, so anyway, they moved to Amarillo, Texas, survived the Great Depression, survived the Dust Bowl, which, he hated wind ever since I've known him from the Dust Bowl, scarlet fever. I mean, that we talk about COVID, right? That they were holed up in their house for 3 months and he was held back a grade. And then at 18, after his junior year of high school, he went and, he went to the war. He went to World War II and he got dropped into the Battle of the Bulge. And he told me, he didn't talk much about the war like a lot of guys, but he told me I didn't take off my boots for 39 days. And he survived that, which is the bloodiest battle of the American side in terms of casualties. And he came back and moved to Denver to go to college. So he went to the University of Denver on the GI Bill, and was essentially a lifelong sales guy after that. And was able to have two had two kids, and my dad was one of them, and put food on the table, and allow them to have like a middle class life. And then my dad is in turn tried to work a little bit harder to put his kids in a good position. And so very fortunate for my granddad, and just a huge, a very influential figure. And they just don't really make him like that. There's stories like that in his generation. They had one, Landon, he had one goal, and that was to make his, we think about our generations, right? Like, we have so many things we want to accomplish. We have so many things we want to do. And he had one goal, and that was to put his kids in a better position than he did.
Yeah.
Had grown up. And he achieved that times a million. I mean, and he did it for, he just did it for the family tree, and I'm very grateful for that. Big part, he's no longer alive. My grandmother is, but he's no longer alive. But I was like, it's an ode to him more than anything, and I'm very fortunate, for the sacrifices that he made.
It's I was just talking to my daughter. I have three daughters, 16, 14, and 8. And I was just talking to my oldest. I said, I do think it's a cultural challenge to where there's this tendency to not value the past, and I'm not here to say that we haven't done things in the past that we're not proud of. You're always going to want to improve, but there's also a tremendous amount to learn from the past, especially from folks like you're describing, your grandfather, my grandfather, people that I looked up to and taught me kind of the right way to do things. And we gotta remember those things, man. So Hanna Golf is, I know it's kind of derived from your daughter's names, right?
It is. Yeah. Again, as a sales guy, I'm not a creative.
I don't think you give yourself enough credit, but
yeah, I have two daughters and a son. My son wasn't born when I came up with the company. It's Hana. I have a daughter, Johanna, daughter Harriet, and it's the path of least resistance there. Just name it Hana. I can kind of lie to Harriet and say it starts with an H, but it's really Johanna is really kind of where it comes from.
I love the simplicity of the designs of the putters, the cleanliness. Like, they're just so simple. I mean, everything from just even the fact that it's just nothing crazy. It's this simple finish. It's a clean, color-filled logo on the back. And you say you don't have a lot of training and branding. Like, did you have an affinity for just simple, clean brands? Like, when you were doing this, was it, I know that the symbol was really cool. Just talk to me about just the brand itself and how you kind of arrived at how you do it.
I know what I like when I see it. I don't know how to create it, if that makes sense. And so I knew I wanted clean. I knew the color I wanted. I mean, the green color I've had on the Perfect Putt logo, my newsletter forever. I love that green. It embroiders really well. I guess what people don't realize when you're creating a logo, one of the things you should have in mind is how well does it embroider or print before.
Absolutely.
And so I knew that it embroidered well, it looked really good, it's sharp against a lot of different colors. And then I knew I wanted script. And so I found a script font in Canva. And then, my oldest daughter's favorite stuffed animal is a tiger. And so, I wanted the logo to be a tiger. And so that's what it looks like. People think it looks like a flower. And I totally.
So did you draw that?
Yeah. So I liked it because it kind of looked like, it just looks like kind of like a mill-like logo, if you will, like machine almost. And so it's just different. When you see it, you can't unsee the tiger. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, no, I love it. It's, see, I think maybe you definitely don't give yourself enough credit, because I think it's fantastic branding. I mean, but I also think some of it just comes from that was kind of what I was getting at earlier when I was talking about Founders Podcast. He talks a lot about starting from first principles. And I think you do that really well, just starting from first principles. Like, I'm not going to overthink this. I'm going to just do something that's simple and straightforward and makes sense. I always say that I'm the worst customer for marketing people, because I'm kind of like you. Like, I have very particular tastes when it comes to branding, but I don't know it until I see it, which makes me like the most difficult customer for anybody in marketing to deal with, because they just have to keep doing things.
Right.
Until I
a lot of revisions.
Yeah. You sold 12 putters in the first day, 50 in the first week, and over 300 in the first full year. Did I get those numbers right?
Yeah. We soft launched this in May pretty much out of necessity, because I had no money left. And so to kind of circle back, I guess, I quit my job in July 2023, emptied the bank account and got to, and I guess put it lightly, I had owned part of the company I was at beforehand. And so I put, when I mean part, I mean a very small amount.
But
and I put that money in it too. And so, yeah. And so I bought a CNC mill, bought everything else, all the necessary equipment to try to, build putters. And, it was May. So we're looking at like 10 months later, I had $2,000 left in the bank account, and I was making good putters at that point. Didn't really want to launch yet, but, I had enough people bothering me to say, hey, look, I want to buy a putter from you. I want to support you. And so we did a soft launch in May, and then we did the hard launch in July out to kind of socials and stuff like that. Yeah.
And that was 2023, you're saying? I'm sorry. 24. Okay. Yeah. Got it.
Me almost a year to teach myself how to properly use CNC mills. Yeah. We sold 318 putters last year, which, doesn't sound like a lot. Like Scotty probably sells a day, they probably cut a peyote like Dick's in a day for like well over that. But it's a great start for, I think, where we're at, and pace growth is really important to me, kind of on the principles that I want to build a business on.
It's, no, I think, what's crazy to me is that I've heard a lot of people talk about the fact that everybody tends to look at, there's a company out here in Louisville called Shady Rays. Shady Rays will probably do 100 million this year. I don't know, it might be more than that. But I've gotten to know one of the guys there's two brothers that founded it, or I guess there's one brother that founded it, and his other brother ended up coming and now works there, and built a friendship with him. And we were talking about the fact that everybody looks at Shady Rays now and they look at him like this overnight success. And he's like, it's 12 years in the making. If you look at James Dyson didn't sell his first vacuum until he was like 44. There's the whole Walmart, Sam Walton. I don't think he started until he was in his 40s. I think that for me, and Shake Shack. I don't know if you know the story of Shake Shack, but they started as like a stand in some park in New York. So, we live in an era, I think, where everybody sort of glorifies the startup and the raising millions of dollars and sort of sprinting out of the gate and doing something fast and doing it big. But our country is really built on merchants. It's really built on people who started small things and wanted to make something, which I really respect from, that you're like, hey, man, if I'm going to do something, hey, I love golf and I want to make it. And then build something that has relatively humble beginnings, but just keep building it. And, that's kind of what, this business will be 10 years old in May. And it's not sort of what I have in my head yet, but, we keep working at it, and it's bootstrapped. It's organically grown. And, we'll wrap up with that question. I know when I asked you, you're like, hey, I don't really have a 10-year plan. And, we live in this, there's so many business people out there, so many buzz phrases. Everybody can talk a lot of business, but, there's just not a lot of people out there doing a lot of business. And you're doing it. So I know you said you don't have a 10-year plan, but tell me what the future looks like next couple of years. What are you trying to do?
Yeah, I haven't been able to answer that question yet. And I don't know why. If you look back, kind of like I'm a pretty goal-oriented person, and everything that I've really done since I was like 15, I set goals, and I'm a pretty competitive person. I'm driven. And I feel like I've got a pretty good work ethic, but I don't know what this thing is going to turn out to be. And here's why I think that is: when you start something, or when I started this, like I was really afraid of failure. I still am, but not near as much as I used to be. And, I think that fear of failure comes from ego. Like, I don't want people to, see me fail in public and, think differently of me. I got over that pretty quickly. And I think that was really important for me to kind of like remove the ego and accept that failure is a possibility. And so why I think that's important, and why I think that's tied into like the 10-year goals, because like, I don't know, because I'm just trying to, this is very cliche, I'm trying to win each day, and I'm honestly trying to just get the process right. If we can get the process right, not worry so much about the results, a lot like golf, but the result will come. And, we'll have a lot of learning lessons along the way.
I love that. I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's like, man, I'm just trying to make great putters, like, and take care of my customers. And it makes me think, there was another Steve Jobs quote that kind of sticks with me. He talked about, once you look around and realize that everything that you're looking at, everything that you see was made by people who are no smarter than you are, then the world starts to really open up. Because I think there's this tendency to think that that's not the case. That I think you even said it in another episode I listened to. You said, that persistence and just being willing to act and then just kind of stick with something and continue to do it and continue to refine covers a lot. Meaning, you don't have to be the smartest. Your words, not mine. You don't have to be the smartest. You don't have to be, have the greatest idea. But if you're willing to act and you're willing to just grind, no pun intended, I suppose, grind it out, you can really, create something.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot in there. There's a couple of books that, I've read that I think are interesting, like that had some confirmation bias, but like Elon's book, the Walter Isaacson wrote, which is basically Fail Fast, which is, it's probably the best book I've read in the last 5 years, just from a standpoint of like how he built his companies and failure. Like he wanted to fail. Like Elon wants to fail because that's how they learn, but they want to fail fast. Like they want to fail as fast as possible. And so for me, I do like to move fast. And I also, I've had more, I mean, I failed at this thing every day since I've started multiple times a day at something. And, but that's how I've learned. And so every day you're learning something. I think, you really just need to keep showing up. Like if you're the last one standing, like you did something right. But, back to Sam Walton, just real quick, is like, my uncle started a soap business. He makes soap. And he's 70 now, but he started it when he was like 45 and didn't make any money. And I'm not kidding when I say this. It was out of his garage for 15 years. Didn't make any money. And they have since had some small success. It's great small business. And I asked him about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, I said, hey, what advice would you have just for me? Because we're kind of manufacturing garage. He's like, two things. He's like, spend more on marketing than you think, which I'm not doing. But he's like, go read Sam Walton's book. And so I picked up Sam Walton's book, and it was absolutely a tremendous read. What a grinder. And I love the fact that he spent some time in Iowa, I think working for JCPenney's. But Sam Walton's strategy was so clear. That guy had no money. I mean, he started that business with no money. And he comes out today. I think it was with Ben Franklin's stores actually to start.
He was. Yeah. And one of his early bosses told him he's never going to make it in retail.
Yeah. And, but what he did is he found a need, and that need I so much agree with, which is rural America. And so Walmart was built in rural Americas, and then they went out from there, and that's really smart. And, it was a great book. Guy has a ton of grit, but yeah, if anyone wants to read two entrepreneurial based books, those are obviously the Elon's a huge recommendation, not breaking any ground, any news there, but the Sam Walton book is really, really good. I think it was written in maybe the early to mid 90s. So It's interesting, but it's a great book.
I think that the one thing I picked up on, especially from kind of a little bit about Sam Walton and what you're alluding to, is like these people that have started these really successful companies, they are, Sam Zell's another guy that I found through Founders Podcast who comes to mind. They are perpetually learning. Like there's no arrogance in them. It's just they have this insatiable kind of just like they're curious, and they think they can learn from anybody and everybody. I remember one of the stories from that book, and you probably remember this. He went to like a trade show, and there was a particular person at that trade show who was kind of like a rock star in the retail business. And he went up to him, and he had like his financials with him, and he sat down with him, and he's like, man, I came here just to meet you. And he's like, well, how can I help you? And and I'm paraphrasing, maybe butchering the story, but basically lays his financials down in front of this guy. And he's like, I want you to look through these and tell me what can I do better? And he's like, he said, the guy looked at his financials and he said, go home, because there's nothing here that you can learn that will improve anything that I just looked at. You're doing better than everybody else in the country. Get on a plane and go home. Keep doing what you're doing. But the humility of him at that point to just continually be like, hey, here's what I'm doing. How can I make it better? And I get the sense, from you, again, just this willingness to act, willingness to be persistent, desire to just be excellent at it. Hey, I don't know where it's going to take me, but we just want to make really good putters and take really good care of our customers. And I want to just keep learning. And honestly, I don't know, if you're writing a prescription for somebody to start a business, it probably wouldn't be much better than that.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't get in this business to make a lot of money. Like if I wanted to start a business to get rich, and it wouldn't be the golf industry. But I do think there's a business to be built here. And, of course we want to grow the business. Of course we want to get more CNC mills and want to hire, more members on our team. And, we want to keep just evolving, but there is no, I guess, grandiose idea, really of what we want to get out of this. But at the end of the day, I just want to make really cool putters, and I want to have that relationship with the customers. People, you can, like, I talk to a lot of people that want to buy putters, and whether that's phone, email, or text or whatever, I don't think a lot of people are getting that from some other places that they go to. And so I want to have that feel that, you're able to reach out to the person actually making your stuff. That's how it was 4 or 5 decades ago in the golf industry. Every town had a little local club maker. And while it's not quite the same, I want to have that similar feel.
Well, this has been great. There's a ton more that we could talk about. I remember just a few other things. Like you were talking a little bit about how you source the chefs and how you And maybe we'll come back for another episode at some point. But I want to give you back your day and let you get back to making putters, man. So really quick before we do that, can you just tell everybody, I know we talked about hannagolf.com, but any other ways, the perfect putt, how can they get in touch with you and connect with you?
Yeah, so hannagolf.com, like my email address is all over that website. So, and there's also contact forms that I respond to pretty quickly on the site there. And whether it's Twitter or LinkedIn, I try to answer every single message that comes my way, unless it gets stuck in spam or something. Yeah, I mean, I want to be able to have that connection. And then also Perfect Putt is perfectputt.substack.com. New piece coming out tomorrow. I know this pod's coming in. I think it's going to be February.
February, yep.
Yeah, good piece coming here late January on maybe why golf needs a shot clock.
Yeah, I like it. That's interesting.
This is the case for it, more or less.
Well, go out and sign up. Those listening, go out and sign up for the newsletter. Go out and buy a putter, man. And I bought one. I told Jared I was just mad because I didn't bring it in, and it's like 26 degrees, out here, so golf's not on my mind here in Louisville at the moment. But I brought it. I wanted to have it on screen, but I don't. But really quick, I also know you have. Do you want to talk about there's the rusted El Reno that's coming at some point?
Yeah, so we got two things that I think are going to be pretty cool here in the next, hopefully, 2 weeks to 2 months. But we're going to do our first limited release. I have no idea how it's going to go. We're going to do 12 and batch number 1. So there'll never be a batch number 1 again. We're going to do 12 in that. We're going to do carbon steel. The El Reno has been a big seller for us. It's 50% of our putters are the El Reno. It's a great
And that's
putter.
the one I bought.
Yeah, it's a great putter. Obviously, I'm biased how I make them, but it tests really well. And so we're going to rust that out and do a limited release on that. I've got the head covers are awesome. They finally came in here, but these head covers are Tremont made these in Florida, and man, they did a bang up job on the
awesome
limited release and everything. So I'm excited about that. And then, yeah, we've got a new model. It's a take on a Fang, a little bit different design. The Fangs are traditionally like really long. I'm sure that's for MOI reasons more than anything, but we're going to do a little bit of shorty Fang, and I put it up against a couple other traditional Fang putters as better MOI. So we got one more tweak on that. The design is done, but one more tweak on that. Honestly, you know what it is, Landon? We got to be able to pick up the golf ball can be picked up with the Fang, right? People want to stack. And you'd be surprised at how many messages I get. Can I pick up a golf ball? And so
it's amazing, those little things that people care about.
This Fang putter, it feels like absolute butter. I think it's the best putter we've made. And I'm hoping to get that dropped here, and probably we'll see. I'm hoping, early March, mid-March, we get that out here before spring comes and people get a new putter in their bag. But I think this putter is going to be, I think maybe our best seller here in 2025. And I'm really excited to get this one out there.
Well, if people are listening, they can call me up and buy a bunch of hats or pens or notebooks or whatever it is you need with your logo on it, because he just burned a little bit of my money here in the next 6 months, because there's a couple putters apparently I'm going to have to buy. So.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something I need to get into later on as apparel, but I don't know the first thing about it, and we'll see where the roads lead us here.
Well, Jared, thanks again for making time, man. Like I said, I know you got your hands full. Love what you're doing. I hope this becomes a small part of helping tell the story and drive some folks to some new awareness of Hanna Golf. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, Landon, thanks for having me, man. I really had a fun time chatting.
Those that are listening, just a reminder, you can go to thebrandherald.com, thebrandherald.com to see previous episodes. Right now, been doing it about 3 years, once a month, stories like this, and we're happy to continue to do that. So keep an eye out for this episode in February, and also the next one in March. So, Jared, we'll talk to you soon.
Right on.